Danielle. So a few announcements to go through before we start our presentation. Our annual fundraiser, Truth to Power, is coming up. That is on October 8th. Again, Danielle will be putting the links here for all of these in the chat in just a minute. But yes, this should be a fun evening of music and food. We're really excited to actually get to spend some time in person with our community. And so if that is something that you're interested in and you're free that evening, we would love to see you. It will be at the Royal Room. And yeah, please reach out if you have any questions. Our next general membership meeting is coming up in a couple weeks. This is our first monthly meeting back. We usually do these every month, but we take a break in August. And so we're really excited to see everyone and welcome everyone back. We have some great presenters. And we'll have even more announcements as well. And of course, a major portion of our general membership meetings is our membership and our community bringing their announcements to us. So please come prepared with your announcements. We have a training coming up for folks who want to volunteer with our voting rights restoration and registration efforts. We've got a number of voter registration events leading up to the general election on November 4th. And if you're interested in volunteering for that, we have volunteers go through a training to make sure they can do nonpartisan voter registration and be able to answer common questions for folks without traditional mailing addresses to be able to vote. Moving forward, we're going to have an advocacy portion, some advocacy action at the end of this training. We'll be joined by Hallie Willis, our policy manager. But Hallie is hosting a couple advocacy trainings. The first one is in person. That is on September 24th. And there's another one that is online, and that's shortly after on October 3rd. Again, both of those links are in the chat, or will be in the chat. They're there. After that, actually in between, is the KCAHS Candidate Forum that is online. I will encourage everyone in this room to attend. You all have direct knowledge and expertise on the impacts of these policy changes that these candidates will be making major decisions on. And it's really important that they hear from professionals, community members, folks like yourself. There's another candidate forum. This is for City of Seattle candidates. I can repeat the same spiel of the importance of having experience and representation there for these policymakers to be able to hear directly from you all. And then the last link that we have is for our next training on public benefits. It's for SSI, SSDI. And we'll go ahead and put that in the chat. That training, again, similar to this, will be in partnership with BLC. And yes, we are hoping to see a lot of you there. And if it's not you that can attend, but there's a staffer or a coworker that would really benefit from that training, please reach out to us and register and make sure you have that link. Okay, so without further ado, we are on schedule. To those who have just joined us, please go ahead and introduce yourself into the chat. Keep the chat open so you can ask your questions, and just know we're gonna be doing Q&A. Our first presentation is from Solid Grounds Benefits Legal Assistance Program, which provides free legal help and representation to people in Washington State whose public benefits have been denied, reduced, or terminated by DSHS. Solid Grounds attorneys advocate with DSHS caseworkers. They represent clients in administrative hearings and offer advice and information about these benefits. So with that, I'd like to introduce Patricia Bowen and April Mazer. If you are here and you want to, I know you're here, but if you want to go ahead and share your screen now, we can get started.
Thank you, Kevin. As Kevin said, we are from Benefits Legal Assistance, which is a program at Solid Ground. Please let me know if you have any difficulty seeing my screen. My name is Patricia Bowen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the program manager and managing attorney for Benefit Legal Assistance. Here with me presenting today is also April. April, if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, hi. My name is April Mazer. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as the social worker for the Benefits Legal Assistance Program.
Thank you, April. So we have built in some times for questions as we go through. If you think of them, feel free to put them in the chat anytime, but if you want to come off of mute to ask them live, please hold off until those questions times. So today we're here to talk about aged, blind, and disabled benefits, or ABD. Before we jump into that, we always like to take a moment to pause and step back and remember that benefits law and public benefits policies are steeped in systemic racism. It is impossible to talk about those topics without keeping in mind the racism that led to and is still having an impact on those benefits today. We're not going to do a deep dive, as that could be its own entire presentation, but we do want to share some links with everyone in the audience, and this PowerPoint will be shared out at the end as well, if anyone would like to read up on those topics. We also like to mention that because you as community members are here today, you get to take advantage of what we call our Ask a Lawyer program. So what that is it's a not funded program that we facilitate that lets community members across the state ask us questions about their clients, whether it be broad questions like, hey, does this qualify? Should I even be looking at this program? Do you know who I should reach out to? Or very specific questions like, I have a client with these fact patterns. Would they qualify for XYZ? You can reach out to us without having to refer your client to us and get an attorney's opinion on your question. The way you utilize that is just to email us at benefitslegalhelp@solid-ground.org. And then in the subject line, just put Ask a Lawyer so we know that you're asking a question and not attempting a referral. This is especially beneficial for those who are outside of King County because we operate solely in King County, and most, if not all, of the public benefits resources from attorneys are within King County. If you're outside of King County, you can still utilize this program and ask us those general questions. We just can't take on your client if ultimately what they need is maybe some legal help, but we can provide you with as much information and assistance as possible. So actually diving in, aged, blind, and disabled, or ABD, is kind of the interim benefit to help people who are ultimately seeking Social Security, but are not actually enrolled yet. And so they're either going through the process, they're attempting to find someone to help them apply, they're waiting to hear back from Social Security, which can unfortunately be a very prolonged wait. And in the meantime, they are struggling to make ends meet. They need that additional boost of cash assistance. So the amount it gives is unfortunately very small. It's not tied to anything like the federal poverty line or area median income. It's changed periodically when the government decides to update it, but it's not unfortunately automatic, and therefore it's also quite low. That being said, any amount of money can be substantial and life-changing when you are in those positions where you just need something while you're waiting for Social Security. So, with the ABD application, recipients also get assistance applying for SSI benefits. They're partnered with an SSI facilitator, and they get a referral to HEN, the Housing and Essential Needs Program, who will be presenting later. To qualify or be eligible for ABD, you do need to be 65 years or older, or blind, or 18 plus with a disability, physical or mental disability that keeps you from working for at least 12 months. And that can be 12 months in the past, or it can be projected to be 12 months in the future. So if you, for example, have what we see commonly is like a traumatic brain injury, and your doctors say this will have an impact for at least 12 months, that could meet that 12-month obligation without you having to have proven 12 months in the past. You also have to have a disability that is not primarily due to alcohol or drug addiction. However, we'll get into it a little bit later. It doesn't mean that you can't also be suffering from drug or alcohol dependency disorder, for example. In addition to those physical or age requirements, you also have to meet income and resource requirements. You do have to meet citizenship and immigration status requirements. And you are not eligible for ABD if you already receive SSI benefits, because this is, again, the stepping stone to receive those, or if you are eligible for and or are receiving TANF. Again, because TANF actually gives you a higher amount, and so we'd rather you be on that program. And there is a helpful link that we put in the PowerPoint as well in Washington Connections. You can go on there, put in some basic information, and see if you qualify. So I mentioned there are some income and resource limits. Here they are. Income limits are quite low. And by quite low, I mean, unfortunately, very low. And they don't change every single year automatically again. So there's two ways of receiving income, or there are two ways that they're categorized, either as earned income or as unearned income. Earned income is the money that you receive from a job. So that has a 50% what they call disregard. What that means is whatever your paycheck is, you divide it by 2 and then compare that to the income requirement. So, for example, it says the income for a household of 1 is $339. If you have a $650 paycheck, you look at that, you divide it in half, it is still less than the 339, so you would be eligible. The alternative is quote unquote unearned income, and that is income from any other source, such as unemployment. It could be VA income, it could be child support, basically anything that you're not quote unquote earning that month. So that has a dollar for dollar comparison. So you don't get to disregard half of it. If you make more than the cap income amount, you don't qualify. So that one is a harder kind of line, but we like to talk about both. Resources. So resources have, and this is new-ish, I mean, it's been a year now, but the resource limit is now $12,000 in liquid resources. Liquid resources means like cash on hand, checking and savings account, something that could be easily sold for money, such as a second car. That being said, I'm going to go to the next one. Your first car, as of about a year and a half ago now, is not considered towards your resource limit because it's considered a reasonable thing to have on hand as a resource available to you that you shouldn't have to sell if you get over that $12,000 resource. And there are times when a second vehicle could also be considered exempt as well. For example, if you have a vehicle that has handicap capabilities that are specific to your disability needs, or you need one on hand for the care of your disabled child, something like that. It's very nuanced, but there are some other exemptions as well. Also, we don't put this in here because it's less common, but we do like to mention your primary residence, if it is owned, also does not count towards your resource limit. So if your client is not renting, but instead owns and is either owns outright or is paying a mortgage towards the property they live in, that property's value also does not count towards the $12,000. So you may have heard that, so the way ABD works is technically it's a loan from Washington State to the recipients to help them make it until they get SSI benefits. Technically, they then need to start making payments back to Washington State to compensate for the ABD benefits they had been receiving. In 2023, there was legislation that was passed that said that that repayment was going to stop as of October 1st, 2025, and it would not have to be repaid. Unfortunately, this most recent legislative session, the state of Washington decided that because of budget deficits, that they were going to prolong that, and now they have bumped it out 4 years. So you do still have to pay back ABD benefits until now, October 1st, 2028. And by that, apparently, I mean 3 years because I can't speak correctly. But that also might change as well in the future if legislation passes to further prolong it. We are doing everything in our power, working with advocates in the state to keep that from happening. But obviously, ultimately, it does come down to legislature. So we'll keep y'all updated if and when that changes. I am going to take a pause right now to answer a few questions before I hand it over to my colleague April to talk about the application process.
There were a few questions that came in through the chat. Let me find them.
Yeah, I want to try to catch the first one here.
Let's see. Veronica asked, are people with green cards qualified as well?
I don't actually know that off the top of my head. That is not, we have not helped someone with a green card apply specifically. I am happy to look into that and to get you a specific answer because I don't want to misspeak. So apologies.
Thank you.
My email is in the chat and it's also on the PowerPoint. I will follow up. If you want to email me, I will follow up with you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. The next question is, does financial aid count as income in either category, earned or unearned?
So it would count as unearned income because it's not as a result of a job. That being said, it is unlikely but not impossible that people in that position would qualify for ABD. We haven't seen it just because financial aid tends to be higher than the unearned income cap. But yes, they could still see if they qualify, and if so, it is unearned income.
Thank you, Patricia. So we have, of course, some reactions to the 3-year extension, which is Striking. A question here about do folks have to pay back the money when they're approved for SSI or SSDI? And for I think it's Richard who asked that question. I think that's exactly what they're talking about. There was some legislation to stop that process, but that has been delayed due to well, justified by budget reasons. Do I have that correct?
Yes,
Patricia?
that's correct.
And then Danielle, do you see other questions for this round?
We just got a new one. Am I muted? No.
Nope, you're on.
The financial aid student loans as opposed to grants and work study are not counted as income, asked Monty. Are financial aid student loans not counted as income?
My understanding is that they are for the purposes of ABD. I know there are some benefits and circumstances where they're not. Just like there are some circumstances where, for example, VA or excuse me, where VA, unemployment, all of that are not considered. For ABD, they kind of look at everything. It also counts if you have like a disbursement from a trust or if you sell an asset, all of that is considered a one-time income that contributes to resources as well.
And then one last question. Can one apply for ABD at the same time they apply for HEN, or is it the same application?
So when you apply for ABD, you also get a referral to the HEN program, and they will be speaking later, so I'll let them give a more nuanced answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Patricia and April. And do you guys want to proceed?
Yeah.
That is the questions that we can see for now.
So so applying for ABD, you can do it by a few ways. Filling out the paper application, which is the same application for food stamps or TANF. You check the same cash box as you would for TANF. But then in the interview process, you would kind of let them know that you would be applying for that. And if you don't have any sort of dependents and stuff, the DSHS kind of knows like which program to be screening for, but it is the same application as all of the other public benefits that DSHS manages. And so you can do that you could apply by filling out the paper application using the Washington Connection app or website, and then or going into a local community service office. I find the fastest way to apply is to use the Washington Connection website, because that makes the application available to DSHS immediately. So if somebody is looking at what's going to be best between a paper application or the website, I would definitely consider the website. I think we can move to the next slide. Oh, CSO stands for Community Service Office. Sorry, I get kind of flowing with acronyms, so feel free to ask me to clarify at any point. I apologize. So this slide kind of gives you an overview of what a previous application looks like. I think DSHS has amended this slightly since this iteration, but more or less the same. You can see the highlighted portion at the top is the check boxes that I'm referring to. I think we can, yeah. So then what the application process looks like is once you have submitted the application, you would then need to complete a financial interview with DSHS. This financial interview is identical to the one that in terms of questions, identical to the one for food benefits. But yeah, sorry, so you can do that by calling in. If somebody is doing the application over the phone with DSHS or in person at the CSO, the financial interview and the application will kind of happen at the same time. So there might not be, it might not appear that there are two distinct steps in that process, but that is kind of what DSHS is doing on their end, is while they're filling out the application, they're also verifying that information. But if the client is submitting the application through the website, then they would need to call in or go into a community service office in order to complete that interview. Once the client has been determined to be financially eligible for the program, they would need to speak with an ABD social worker. And then that social worker is going to do kind of an assessment to determine, you know, if what doctors this person is seeing, what disability are they claiming, and what sort of verification or support do they need in order to be able to determine whether or not somebody is eligible. Yeah, so that is correct, Michael. The DSHS social worker interviews are available to complete anytime Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. In terms of the interviews, I highly recommend calling in as early as possible, especially if you're planning to do both of the interviews over the phone. So in my experience in helping people with these interviews, if you're doing both of them, it's probably going to take you about 4 hours in order to complete them. Oh, the presentation went away. Thanks, Patty. So it'll take a little bit of time to get through that process. Prepare yourself if you're helping with somebody, or prepare the person if they're, going to be calling in themselves. And then once the social worker interview is complete, DSHS will send the client a consent form or have the client sign a consent form so that they can request the medical records from the doctors. DSHS will only, per statute, they can only review records within the last 90 days. Generally speaking, they can use older records to supplement medical records, but something in the medical records has to be within the last 90 days to support the diagnosis that the client is claiming. But going back further than that can also help to kind of establish, those timelines that Patty was talking about with the 12 months. If you can kind of help to establish how long the client has been dealing with this issue, it can also kind of help DSHS get a fuller picture. But something within the last 90 days has to be there. If the client does not have those records, DSHS can do a couple of, or is kind of required to sort of help the client get what they need in order to be approved. So this can look like if a client is claiming a mental health diagnosis as their disability, DSHS can set them up with a psych evaluation with one of their contracted doctors. If it is a physical disability, DSHS has contracted community providers. I think in Seattle, it is one of those places is Harborview. So they can go there with a form that DSHS gives them stating that DSHS will help pay for them to get an evaluation in order to be able to be evaluated for the program. So just because somebody hasn't seen a doctor within the last 90 days doesn't mean that they can't still be screened for this program. We just need something that's, fresher or new in DSHS's eyes. If they don't have a physical provider, again, I would recommend that they talk to DSHS about that and find out
who the community service offices are, or like community doctors' offices that are contracted so that they can get that examination. Tips for the application process. I find it really helpful to attend interviews with my clients because then I know exactly what DSHS needs from the client, and we can kind of help expedite that review process as much as we can. We also are in that process beholden to, DSHS's ability to process the information and, doctor's offices getting things to DSHS and so on. So there can be some places where having an advocate can really help reduce or eliminate barriers for the participant. That can look like helping clients download a copy of their medical records off of MyChart, getting consent forms and helping the client request records from their doctor if their doctor doesn't use a portal like MyChart, and kind of those types of things. And then helping the client schedule evaluations if that's necessary. And kind of helping navigate DSHS as sort of a bureaucratic system, because I think that it can be easy to say on the surface that these departments are very accessible, but I think in the reality for a lot of clients is that accessibility isn't necessarily there in the way that they need it to be there. The other thing, and then getting advocates to write letters of support for clients and kind of help to supplement those records in some sort of way. So if you're somebody that works really closely with a client as their case manager, and you don't think that what's in the medical records really is sufficient to state like how it is impacting this person's functioning, but writing a letter to submit to DSHS on the client's behalf can also be kind of considered as part of that process. It'll heavily be relied on the medical records, but you can also provide those kind of notes of support and stuff too. So this is a previous authorization form. I think it's slightly different now. But again, this is kind of an older iteration of a DSHS form. This is the form that DSHS sends to the client to sign off to request the medical records. And a lot of times what you'll see is multiple providers on one authorization, and then that is just sent to the providers as needed. So defining disability, how DSHS defines this is that it's sort of based loosely on the Social Security requirements. Because again, ABD is a stopgap program to help people that are applying for those Social Security benefits. So the way that DSHS is going to define disability is sort of loosely modeled on what Social Security Administration has. But basically, it is that the client is unable to work, has a physical or mental health impairment that keeps them from working for at least 12 months or will result in death. And work is defined as any substantial gainful employment with earnings earning less than $1,620. And this amount will sort of change annually. But again, like the income requirements are substantially below that $1,620. So it's, loosely modeled off of the Social Security stuff. So I just wanted to highlight why we're seeing some different numbers there. So. Ooh, Veronica, that is a very good question. I think that would be a better question to bring to the Ask a Lawyer, just so that we can talk a little bit more about the impacts that it would have on the client, but in a non-recorded and confidential space. Co-occurring disorders are also something that we see often with the clients that we help. If a client is struggling with substance use or chemical dependency, though they can still apply and be approved for ABD. The sort of caveat to that is that the substance use or, alcohol use or that dependency isn't a direct cause to their disability. So if somebody has like alcohol-induced dementia, that dementia doesn't is something that DSHS kind of has a harder time approving. Not to say that somebody can't be approved with that, because again, co-occurring disorders, you would just need to show that there's something else outside of that specific diagnosis. And that is just an example. I'm pulling from an experience I've had with a client. So, and then the other thing is that it will likely be required that the person participate in some type of substance use treatment, or they have a medical waiver from that substance use treatment. So if there is a reason, like if there is a physical condition that is also going to make it difficult for the person to get to treatment or something, DSHS can look into those and see if they would be eligible for a waiver for it, but they would need a doctor to sign off on it. So then how are we proving disability to DSHS? Again, this is a part of sort of the review process of those medical records that DSHS receives. So the more records and kind of robust way you can show DSHS that the impacts your client's disability is having on them, kind of the better your client is going to be positioned for that approval. So if DSHS is only getting 10 pages from their doctor, but for some reason you're able to get 25 to 50 pages, then faxing those documents into DSHS, obviously with client consent, is can help kind of make sure that those things are being everything is being reviewed. So it can help if you're having a client, especially a client that has applied for this program before, but they were denied. I always recommend kind of calling into DSHS and figuring out what happened with that previous application. Was it denied because they didn't have sufficient medical evidence? And if that's the case, then okay, I need to work with this client to get more medical evidence to provide to them. Or is it something like, they were denied because they couldn't determine, the length of the disability? Okay, I need to work with the doctor to get, that sort of documentation to DSHS. So finding out what happened with the previous application is definitely very helpful. But again, you're proving disability based off of the medical evidence that is submitted to DSHS, and that medical evidence needs to be within the last 90 days. And come from a certified health provider that's listed in the WAC. And there's a number of mental health and physical practitioners that would be eligible for that. I think I covered everything on that. Oh, yes. And then here's kind of a short list of other, some of the most common practitioners that you would see. So an MD, a DO, or an advanced registered nurse practitioner, etc. So who can diagnose the mental health impairment? That's going to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, an ARNP. Sorry, I cannot talk today. I really apologize. Or a PA or a school psychologist. So if you have a client that's seeing like a a licensed social worker, for instance, their records can be used to supplement client, like to show kind of the impacts, but they aren't recognized as somebody that can diagnose that based off of the WAC. So that's when something like scheduling a client for a psych evaluation to go along with those records can really kind of help the client and DSHS complete the whole picture and be able to kind of go based off of statutes. So then proving inability to work. Again, this is going to be kind of based in the records that are received by DSHS. But sometimes records can, sometimes what DSHS needs in the records is not necessarily what's in the records. So there are ways that you can supplement that. Again, the psych evaluation or the physical evaluation are options, or providing a letter or something along with the records that you're providing to DSHS. And then the evaluations, I've talked a lot about these. If a client needs a formal diagnosis, again, so maybe they have a mental health disability that's keeping them from being able to work. They've been seeing a licensed social worker to work on this, but that isn't somebody that's qualified in the WAC to provide DSHS with the diagnosis. That's when you would want to supplement with the psych evaluation. And similarly with a physical evaluation, so if you have a client that's not seeing somebody that's qualified, you can have that physical evaluation to supplement that. Sorry. And then, yeah. Or if the client needs help paying for the exam. So if somebody is homeless and cannot, or unhoused and cannot pay for themselves or are not on Medicaid or something, or don't have insurance, then DSHS can step in and help them. And then this is just kind of an example of sort of what that physical and functional evaluation form looks like. So the client would just take this into the doctor that they have the appointment with, and then they would be able to fill out that information, and then the doctor will then fax it into DSHS so that they are able to review and process it. And there's a similar form for the psychological evaluations too, but generally that's done with a DSHS contracted provider when you set those up. But if you do have somebody that is not going through a DSHS contracted provider, then you would want to download the form that's noted here. And then this is just kind of some sample letters of support that we have seen in come in from clients. I will not read these to you, but to get an idea of kind of what that can look like, we basically want to establish, the length of time they've been working with the doctor, what the function or working with the caseworker or whoever you're getting the letter from, establish, the type of diagnosis maybe, or the impacts of that diagnosis. And again, some more sample letters. Tips for the disability evaluation. Again, get DSHS's as many records as you possibly can so that they are able to review the most robust history for the client. Make sure that those are within the last 90 days, or at least a portion of them are within the last 90 days. And then, you can help the client, request those medical records and either fax them in or upload them to DSHS's document site. You can follow up with the DSHS social worker. I guess this is maybe something that I skipped over and I apologize for. When somebody applies for ABD, DSHS will assign them to a specific case manager, and that case manager will send them a letter that or a social worker, and that assigned social worker. So you can kind of send things attention, like if you're faxing in medical records, it can be helpful to send it attention to that specific caseworker just to try to get it to the right place a little bit faster. It'll also list the person's phone number. So instead of trying to go through DSHS's 2-hour holds for those ABD social workers, you can call the specific social worker that's been assigned to your client and talk to that person directly. I do recommend making sure that there is a signed consent form on file with DSHS so that they are able to discuss those things with you. Common reasons ABD is denied. So I think the most common thing that I see is just that DSHS didn't get the right medical information. So whether that is, the medical records were too old, so outside of that 90 days, it doesn't support, like, maybe the diagnosis is there, but it doesn't list how long it's expected to impact the client, but some way that those records are insufficient. And I would try to get specific information as to what was wrong. So, because if it's something like the length of time, then you can get that letter of recommendation or letter of support from the doctor that is going to support maybe that time frame, and then supplement the records with that. The other thing that is really common is that the medical records were received outside of the 45 days of the application. So a client has 45 days to provide DSHS with medical evidence before DSHS will deny the application. So if it's being received after that, it'll create a denial for the client. You do have a little bit of time after that 45 days to provide documentation to DSHS, but it'll change kind of how DSHS back pays the client. So if you have questions or that comes up, you feel free to reach out to us and we can kind of talk a little bit more specifically about that issue. And then when to appeal versus when to reapply. You should reapply if any of these are true. You think DSHS, you should reapply if you think DSHS correctly denied you, but your situation has changed. Reconsideration if you give DSHS additional information within 30 days of the denial. So again, like that 45 days, DSHS is going to send out a letter saying that the application has been denied. So if the client provides records on like the 46th or 47th day, so we're within that 30 days post denial, then you can request that DSHS reconsider the application. And then, but if you think that DSHS has incorrectly denied the benefits, then you should request an appeal. And then that would be also a time to refer to our program so that one of our staff attorneys can help with the client in that appeal process. Avoiding pitfalls. So report changes of circumstance to DSHS as soon as you can. The client will have till the 10th day after that change. So say, the change happens, tomorrow on the 11th, then they would have until October 10th to report that change. So there is a little bit of time, but we want to be reporting those changes as quickly as possible. And if there's any questions about like, do I need to report that? Feel free to contact us if that's more comfortable, or you can reach out to DSHS and ask them as well. And just state it in kind of a general way. And then make sure you're complying with program requirements, because again, as I mentioned kind of briefly, if somebody has like a substance use disorder in their diagnosis, a lot of times that'll trigger DSHS to require them to engage in some type of treatment. So making sure that they're complying with those treatment requests and stuff, because if there is failure to do so, then DSHS will terminate the benefits. And if there is a reason why you are unable to comply with those, so like if they're requesting mental health treatment for you, but you can't find a doctor or something, then you can tell DSHS kind of what's happening there, and they will be able to kind of help you sort of figure out how to comply with the requirements or waive that for you if necessary.
I also realized I think we missed a changeover because you've been talking a lot. So if you'd like to take a pause, I can take it from here. I don't know how much is left, but I think, thank you, April. And
You're welcome. I got on a
apologies that
roll and couldn't stop.
you did. It was great. I just also want to give you a break from talking if you'd like it. So continuing on how to avoid benefit pitfalls. One of the biggest things we can advocate for is to ask for an equal access plan or an EAP when your client needs it. This is a supplemental accommodation plan. It used to have a bunch of different acronyms, but it is now called an EAP, and it can be used for a variety of reasons and to provide a variety of accommodations. The most common of those are to help with a mental, neurological, physical, or sensory impairment, but it can be for other things as well. For example, we have had clients who are unhoused, and therefore a physical letter mailed to them is not going to actually get to them because they don't have somewhere to receive mail. So as a part of their equal access plan, they have in there that they also get phone calls to let them know about updates to their case. We also have gotten accommodations for those who are blind or hard of seeing, because again, receiving those letters in the mail are unhelpful if you can't read them. If they're hard of seeing, you can also ask for those to be sent in larger fonts, for example. You can ask for longer extension periods for deadlines. So say you usually get 30 days to respond to a notice sent to you, you can ask for 90 days. And it becomes a default accommodation that's applied to all of their ongoing paperwork. This is also extremely helpful if it's in their EAP plan, so that if it's accidentally violated, you can bring that up as a disability violation in court and get a determination reversed, which is very helpful. And basically it can be inventive. It's just an accommodation that allows your client to access their benefits in the same way that somebody without an impairment would be able to access their benefits. So you as a caseworker can help kind of think up creative ideas that would help your client. As long as it's quote unquote reasonable, DSHS will accommodate it. They'll put it into the plan and they have those protections. The alternative, or something to do in addition, is to designate what's called an authorized representative or an ARAP. What that means is it is a secondary person to yourself that you designate who can represent you either when you apply for and receive benefits, they can also get paperwork on your behalf as well. They can call in and ask questions on your behalf. They can request a hearing on your behalf. So if you are struggling or your client is struggling to meet their own needs, understand the paperwork that's being sent to them, act on those requirements in the paperwork, etc., it can be helpful to designate an AREP, and that can be for a short amount of time. For example, when we help clients at BLA, we sometimes put ourselves as the AREP so that we get all of their paperwork and we can make decisions on their behalf short term, or it can be permanent. You can choose to make someone a lifelong AREP. So for example, if you want to make a significant other or family member or close friend an AREP so that they also have those rights and responsibilities, you can. And you as advocates can be AREPs as well. That being said, when your relationship with the client ends, it is important to make sure DSHS knows to rescind your AREP so that you're not getting any sort of confidential information. Oh, Kevin, I see you have a raised hand.
Just want to check in on time because we're getting close.
Oh.
Like, I want to make sure you have a few minutes left over for Q&A.
I think I have one more slide and then
Okay.
it's just my information and I'll do questions.
Okay.
So this is the last one, I think. What to do if something goes wrong. So if you think your client has had a benefit that either was denied unfairly, was reduced, terminated, or an overpayment was issued, and you think, I don't think that's right, we highly recommend request a hearing. It doesn't mean that you have to actually go to the hearing, but it does mean that you preserve your rights. So how to request a hearing, you can do it in a plethora of ways. The easiest is to either call DSHS and literally just say, I want to request a hearing for this decision. But you can also go online. I'm happy to share the link to that as well. It's easy enough, and you as an advocate can do it on their behalf as well. We do it all the time for clients. And what that does is it preserves their right to have those benefits potentially continued, because if you do it within 10 days of the decision, you can get prolonged benefits while the legal process is taking effect. It also lets you have time to, for example, contact an attorney, have us look through everything, let you know what our legal analysis is, and it also has someone at DSHS actually assigned to your case as a hearing representative to take close look at your specific case and see if any red flags pop up for them as well. I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many times things happen on the back end. Clients receive notices, and then once a hearing rep actually looks at it, they go, oh yeah, this is clearly an error, let me fix this for you. And us as attorneys end up doing basically nothing other than request a hearing, reach out to the hearing representative, and they take care of it. So if you ever have any doubts as to whether a decision is correct, request a hearing, request a hearing, request a hearing. And one of those ways, if you think, oh yeah, this is definitely wrong, and you're in King County, you can refer to us and we're happy to represent those clients in court as well. Oh, here's just the deadlines. So 10 days if you want to continue your benefits. So get ABD benefits while your case is pending in court. 90 days to request one at all before you lose your right. That being said, there is some wiggle room there. There can be what's called good cause. So if there's extenuating circumstances, you can have up to a year to request that hearing, but it does get sticky and it's more complicated to do that. So we advocate do it as soon as possible. And then we're just answering questions, and I'm putting up our contact information as well. So here is my direct contact information if you have questions, our intake manager, and then how to contact our intake line as well. And we'll pop back to questions. And apologies, I put a link for the green card question that I had previously not been able to answer, and I put a link for some of the other questions as well, but please let me know if there's anything I did not answer in the chat.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Patricia. Yes, we'll want to go through a couple of questions here, but please take down that email address. It's also at the top of the chat, so you have some time throughout the rest of the training to make sure you get that in case we don't end up getting to one of your questions. Just kind of going through the chat, just want to make sure I catch a couple of these. There was a question about a naturopathy doctor to determine disability. I think a quick answer would be DSHS is pretty formal, I think is maybe one way to put it about the type of medical verification, maybe old fashioned. And I think just kind of looking at it in those terms, as a former case manager and direct service worker, I had lots of conversations with clients who really didn't prefer standard doctors and did a lot of advocacy around just explaining, the needs that DSHS had and the needs that the client had and how to bridge that gap, and just also explaining that a client can absolutely go to whatever doctor they want to, but systems sometimes need their own verification, and that is a whole separate conversation. Patty, did you see any other questions or April that we wanted to make sure that we touch on?
One that I do see is, it says, generally speaking, is it helpful to apply for ABD first if a client is interested in applying for SSI and needs support? Yes. There's not a downside to applying for it. If you're not eligible, it'll be denied. But if you are eligible, then you will get that interim financial support. The other question I saw was about that repayment. The repayment of ABD does happen automatically. So once you are approved for SSI, you get what's called like back payments to when the SSI should have been approved or applied till when it was. And from that chunk amount of money, that's when the repayment occurs. So say your client should have received $3,000 in SSI. And in the interim, they've been receiving ABD and it's come to 1,500, then the back payment amount would be the remaining 1,500. Obviously, ideally, we would like to see the clients just receive the full amount of their back pay. But this is not like garnishments or anything where the client is going to end up with a debt that they actually have to like write a check for or have taken out of their future benefits. It's just that they won't get the full amount of their back pay when they're approved for SSI or SSDI. So apologies if I worded that in a way that implied otherwise.
Oh, I don't think you worded it that way, Patricia. These systems and these processes, these qualifications are very complicated, and that's why it's so great that you all are here today, because if this is complex for us, this is complex for our clients who are dealing with a million different challenges or some pretty major barriers. April and Patty, did we see any other big questions? I'm looking through and I feel like we might have caught them. I do want to say, if you're sitting there and you're really hoping that we can get to it, we are really close to time. We pretty much have to move forward. So is there anything else from the two of you as far as a question that you wanted to answer?
I think I just want to highlight, thank you to Richard Gibson in the chat, who's bringing up the very important requirement to, comply with those treatment requirements, comply with the reapplications and the renewals, make sure that your client's phone numbers, contact information, etc., is up to date, because it is considered, quote unquote, their responsibility to make sure that DSHS can reach out to them and ABD can reach out to them. And so I appreciate you putting that in the chat as well and highlighting that. And the
Yes,
only
thank you,
other
Richard.
question I see is about HEN. So seems like a great time to hand it over to talk about HEN.
I was just about to say, yes, so there is a question about HEN in the chat, and perfect time to switch over. So if I can welcome our next presenters, Carrie Davis and Sierra Wood. This is the Catholic Community Services HEN program, King County HEN program for HEN clients. The Housing and Essential Needs program provides access to essential needs items, transportation assistance, and potentially rental or utility assistance. And that is the very tip of the iceberg. So, Carrie, if you are with us, we see your presentation. Welcome. And also for folks for folks here, please do continue to put your questions in the chat. We're going to try to make sure we have some time at the end to address those as well. And a question about a break. There is no break scheduled. My apologies. It's just a 2-hour training, but I encourage you to take care of yourself. This meeting will be recorded and on our YouTube channel, and of course sent out to folks attending. So, Carrie, if you're on, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. I can hear you just fine.
Great. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for that great presentation on ABD benefits. My name is Carrie Davies. I am a supervisor at the Housing and Essential Needs program in King County. And I'm joined today by Sierra. Sierra, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sierra. I am a case manager with the HEN King County program.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the Housing and Essential Needs program. So Housing and Essential Needs is a statewide program that's funded by the Washington Department of Commerce. Every county in Washington has a HEN program that is managed locally by a homeless prevention service provider. And here in King County, Catholic Community Services of Western Washington is the organization that manages HEN here. Something that we're going to talk about or try to hammer home today is that at the HEN program, we really don't have anything to do with client eligibility. Eligibility for the HEN program is entirely determined by DSHS. And so we learned a lot about how clients can get approved for ABD. So one of our big take-homes from today's presentation is that people who qualify for ABD benefits qualify for the HEN program. So a quick snapshot for what our clients look like. 95% of our clients at the HEN program in King County are those clients that are receiving age blind and disabled cash assistance. We also have about 5% of our clients who are general HEN referrals, meaning they have more of a temporary disability, so physical or mental incapacity. That means they can't go to work for 90 days. But for now, really the majority of the clients that we're working with are receiving ABD. Also, about 0.1% of our clients are on the Pregnant Women's Program. So talking about DSHS qualifications, there are some general qualifications that we can talk about. Clients have to be an adult or an emancipated minor. They have to meet citizenship and alien status requirements. We talked about this a little bit. So people that are kind of temporarily disabled. So if they have 90 days where they're unable to work due to physical or mental or substance use disorder, and if they have no or limited income or resources, these are people that would qualify. The big one, again, 95% of our clients receive ABD. So clients that are approved for ABD automatically get a HEN referral. Overall, our clients, because we're the King County HEN program, our clients have to live within King County to receive HEN services through our program. But yeah, again, DSHS is the one that makes all the determines eligibility for clients. There are some folks that we can say would not receive a DSHS referral to HEN. So again, those are people that are able to work, or if they do have income over federal limits, if they're receiving temporary assistance for needy families, if they're receiving Social Security benefits, or are an ineligible spouse of a Social Security recipient. It's just some other rules, but overall, again, we're gonna try to make sure that the key takeaway is that DSHS, they determine who's qualified to be referred to the HEN program. So how would someone enroll in the HEN program? So if someone comes as a walk-in to one of our offices, they talk to our front desk or call our resource line and say that they're interested in the HEN program. First thing we would do is ask them to go to DSHS so they can visit the website, or call one of their offices or visit one of their community service offices so that they can have that initial conversation about whether or not they qualify for ABD. So once an individual receives ABD, then they immediately get a HEN referral letter. So again, ABD, we're looking at disabled adults with no income. They're the ones that qualify for ABD, and then they get that HEN referral. So as soon as they get a HEN referral, they're able to either visit one of our offices or call our HEN resource line, which the phone number is listed here. And our resource specialist will do a quick eligibility check to make sure that DSHS determined that this client was eligible. And then at that point, there's a very brief enrollment questionnaire to get clients immediate access to assistance. So what does the King County Housing and Essential Needs Program provide? So after determining eligibility, clients have immediate access to a fully subsidized Orca Lift annual bus pass, also a monthly bag. So every month the client can pick up an essential needs bag, which is about $70 worth of hygiene and cleaning supplies. Also, if the client is interested, they can sign up for our rental assistance interest list. So when rent becomes available, a case manager reaches out to that client, and then there's a more involved intake process with some more paperwork, but then that client can start receiving rental assistance every month. So again, when the funding is available, our monthly rent and utility assistance, and because we're working with clients that receive ABD benefits, we don't have a deadline for our clients. You know, if they're receiving ABD, as long as they remain eligible through DSHS, they can stay on the program. And so each month, our rental assistance, it's determined by the type of living situation that the client is in. So for a typical apartment where the client is on the lease, we can pay $1,119 per month. There's some other situations if a client is living, you know, in a single room with some private amenities, some shared amenities, we offer $700 a month. And then for clients that are living with a friend or family member, so more of like a couch surfing type situation or a temporary living arrangement while they're looking for more stable housing, we can pay $400 per month. These amounts come from the King County fair market rate for efficiency units. So we're able to pay 50% of that MMR. Also, depending on the client's living situation, they have access to move-in funds and past due rent and utility assistance. So if they're living in a typical apartment and we are able to pay $1,119 per month, these clients also have the same amount, so $1,119 that's available for holding deposit, security deposit, application fees, and also clients are able to live in apartments that cost more than $1,119 per month. So if there is an additional rent portion that the client is responsible for, there are potential situations where the client could fall behind on their rent portion. So they also have access to this immediate past due rent assistance in the same amount as their monthly allotment. So these amounts too for move-in assistance and past due or utility assistance, these are also, they renew every 2 years. So, you know, depending on how long the client is on the program, if they do use all of their move-in assistance funding, it does renew in 2 years, so they can continue to move while they're on the program. One other thing to mention is that we are a subsidy, so our payments go directly to the landlords. We don't pay clients directly. But that's why we get a lot of housing documents so that we're able to pay apartment complexes or landlords directly. So we're going to talk about the 3 main programs that offer rental assistance through the King County Housing and Essential Needs Program. The first program is the Homeless Prevention Services. So at the time the client does their intake, if the client is housed at that time, then they go into the Homeless Prevention Services program. So this is people that need ongoing rental support to stay stably housed. Just because they're housed at the time of their intake doesn't mean it's necessarily a stable situation. So these clients could be facing, eviction notices, payer vacates, or just other rental debts. Case managers work directly with the client, and also we get a housing ROI so that case managers are able to work with the landlords. And we get all our housing documents processed so that we can work on clearing balances at the apartment. So that's covering, like we talked about, past rent, past utilities that are due, and then doing the ongoing monthly rent. Case managers will also work with clients in a housing stability plan. So they'll help them sign up for housing choice vouchers or other subsidies in King County that can be considered more permanent. Our case managers on this program have caseloads currently that are around 90 to 100 clients. So they're kind of unable to provide complete wraparound case management services, but we are able to refer clients out to either outside organizations that we work with or some programs that are directly within Catholic Community Services of Western Washington. Also, we are working with new clients. So in 2025, we were able to bring on 35 new clients to the Homeless Prevention Services program. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sierra to talk about our two other rental assistance programs.
So our second program is our homeless services program. This is for our unhoused clients who are trying to move into housing. So we work with clients to remove barriers. This could be back rent or other additional barriers to get these clients into appropriate housing situations, including permanent supportive housing. We do enroll clients into coordinated entry for all so that we can make these referrals for clients as needed. These clients are typically or will slightly have higher needs than prevention. So these clients will likely need a little bit more support in finding housing. So that's why this portion of the program is set aside so that we can provide that. These caseloads are typically around 65 to 75. And in this past year, we have brought on 45 new clients. And these clients that we are bringing into both prevention and homeless services are due to clients who have transitioned out of the program. So that has been an opening that has been identified and has allowed us to transition those new clients in. Additionally, we also have the HEN stability program. One of the HEN eligibility requirements is to not be receiving SSI or SSDI, but there is a need for those services. Clients continuing to need support after receiving SSI and SSDI. So there is a portion of the program that is set aside for that. So when clients lose eligibility due to receiving those benefits, they may be eligible. They have to have been enrolled in HEN prevention or our rapid rehousing or homeless services and be in housing with HEN paying rent in order for that transition to be assessed. They cannot be living in subsidized housing, and that's also a requirement for both other programs as well, other portions of the program. There is an income cap of 30% AMI. So that's currently 2,400 for a one-person household, and they would need to have continued support to stay stably housed. These clients are required to pay 30% of their income towards rent. So the subsidy that they receive from HEN typically tends to be reduced, but not always. It really just depends on how much the rent is at the time. We have about a third of our clients that are currently on this portion of the program, and it was recently approved to be a statewide program, but it is not directly funded. So it's a county by county determinant on how many people are allowed to be in that portion of the program. So in order to stay eligible for the HEN program, we do have a couple of requirements. We do check eligibility with DSHS through the benefits verification system every 90 days. So if we see that a client isn't eligible through that system, they will receive a notice and they are eligible to receive 90 days more of service. So that allows them some wiggle room to go to DSHS and become re-eligible, or to get us the necessary information that we need in order to screen them for a HEN stability transfer. And then that transfer would take place at the end of those 90 days. We also have required check-ins on top of that in order to have clients confirm their contact information and their living situation. If we do not hear from clients within those 90 days, if we don't have a 90-day check-in, we are required to hold their rent. So case managers will typically reach out or let clients know, hey, we need you to check in either 30 or 60 days in order to stop those to prevent those services from being halted. Clients will also receive a letter and would be reached out by their case managers to try and re-engage. And they have an additional 90 days from that point to check in before they are exited from the program. Note about what HEN Casey provides. So what we do really well is that we are a good financial backbone to our clients in order to assist in housing stability. Our essential needs are very helpful for clients considering the limited income that they have on ABD, and we provide light to moderate case management. We are working on building up our rapid rehousing portion of the program to be able to provide more solid services for our unhoused clients. What we struggle with is, unfortunately, we're not a program that's set up to support higher needs clients. So we do a lot of referrals. Due to our high caseloads, we're only able to provide light housing navigation for our unhoused folks. What that looks like would be clients coming in and getting support looking for housing. We do not have funding or staff capacity to meet the current needs. There are more people being approved for ABD and are HEN eligible than unfortunately we have funding for. So that is unfortunately something that we are struggling with right now as well. What we don't do, we're unable to do intakes for people who are not currently HEN eligible by DSHS. We cannot provide rental assistance for people who are living in subsidized housing or are homeowners, but they may be eligible for one-time assistance and those monthly essential needs bags. And we are unable to serve folks who are not living within King County. As I mentioned on the last slide, we do referrals for clients. So we're able to do referrals to CREW, which is the Counseling, Recovery, and Wellness program for clients who need counseling services, are expressing interest in starting their recovery journey. We do referrals to the Tenant Law Center. They assist with housing, legal issues. We make referrals to Housing Connector. So if a client expresses that they have barriers to getting into housing, we make referrals to them and they're able to assist. We also make referrals to FCS, or the Foundational Community Support. This is specifically for clients who have been deemed ineligible either due to the fact that they are working or going back to school. That program provides employment services and housing services, as well as voucher sign-up assistance. So our current numbers, the current number of people who are eligible for the HEN program in King County is 12,024. Statewide, it's 37,000. The total number of clients who are enrolled in the HEN program is 1,813. There are 1,739 clients who are housed, and right now there's 74 clients who are unhoused. And the number of people that we have on our rental interest list currently is 3,444, with about 40 to 50 people being added to that list every week. The number of EN bags that we distribute is about 205 a week across 4 sites throughout the county. And the Orca lift cards that we distribute is about 200 a month. And this is just some information about where clients can access services. So our HEN resource line, that's a great way to connect with the program. If anybody has any questions, just general questions, you can also reach out to the email HENKC. We also have 3 offices where clients can access services and pick up their EN bags. So this is for clients who are on our rental interest list or are actively receiving our rental assistance. We have 2 locations in Seattle, and we have the Kent Family Services Center in Kent.
All right, thank you, everybody. And we can open it up to questions if anybody has any questions.
Yes, thank you all so much. I know it's a ton of information for everybody. We've had quite a bit of activity in the chat, and so we'll just kind of go from the top. We are doing good on time. Of course, if we're getting close to time, I'll transition us back. But just going from the top, oh, I just had it. Give me 1 second here. And you may have already addressed this as you were talking. I'm not sure before the switch to Sierra if you guys were answering some of the questions, but we see one about asking if HEN works retroactively at all.
That was answered by Trisha at the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see here. Yeah, oh, I see, yes. And Trisha is also chiming in specifically about that question. Let's see here. We have been getting some of these questions answered as they're coming down the way. And so maybe I'll ask folks to, if you have other questions or if I'm missing your question, if you wouldn't mind just kind of putting that back in the chat. I really want to make sure we use this time to the fullest. We have one here at the end here at the bottom. Do you have an opportunity to speak about the process for receiving a HEN referral letter from DSHS and then getting into your system? That's from Michael.
Yeah, I think we touched briefly on that, but essentially after that initial conversation that the client has with DSHS, and if DSHS does determine that the client qualifies for, remember, primarily ABD benefits, but they can get the general HEN referral as well. They immediately get that HEN referral letter. So the client at that point can call our resource line or visit one of our offices that has walk-in hours. So again, that's the RCC and the Phoenix Center that are in Seattle, and then our Kent Family Center for South King County clients. That initial conversation with one of our resource specialists or intake specialists, it's very brief. They just do a check on that benefits verification system to make sure that the client is deemed eligible by DSHS. And then at that point, it's really a very basic enrollment questionnaire. The client doesn't go through the full intake packet at that point. But at that point, they immediately have access to the essential needs bag and the ORCA card. And if they express the interest in receiving rental assistance, we can put them on the rental assistance interest list as well. So the longer, more involved intake process comes when the funding is available for rental assistance. So that's when a case manager, at the end of every month, we do exit clients for different reasons. But if we have space that opens up in our rental assistance program, that's when case managers reach out to those clients to come in for an intake appointment where they do sign a lot more consent forms and housing documents. And that's when we can take over with rental assistance that's ongoing.
Thank you, Carrie. We have a question about that Trisha was able to answer in the chat. Just want to make sure that I'm seeing that it's connected to a specific question. Oh, that's addressing the wait list. And then also there was a specific question, if you have clients that haven't been getting responses, then looks like maybe reaching out to Naeem or folks over there on this call might be able to help. And then also just another thank you to Richard providing some extra information. Just mentioning that when a client is approved for HEN, a letter will be sent with resources, but the numbers to call. Question at the very bottom: how many people are already on the wait list for HEN?
Which slide?
The slide for the interest.
Oh, and we have an answer from Trisha. Right now, there's over 3,000 people on the list.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we know we live in a densely populated area. You think that number is a little bit higher in Seattle, King County, but yeah, that is a took the words right out of my mouth in the chat. That is a long list. But of course, as you all do every day when you're supporting your clients, no stone unturned. You're looking to explore every resource that might be able to help. And so, yes, I want to make sure that we are answering all questions. If there's any other questions, again, this is a great time to ask. Similar to our first presentation, we do have email contacts for our presenters. So if you have more in-depth questions or something that's maybe a little bit more specific, you might not be able to answer client-specific questions, but I think you can certainly direct it that way. One more question at the bottom is that just for King County or just statewide? I know I just mentioned that I assumed it was for King County, but for our presenters, if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, so we are presenting on behalf of the King County Housing and Essential Needs Program. But again, every county in Washington has a HEN program, not necessarily managed by Catholic Community Services. But sometimes we do have clients that want to move to other counties, and we're able to refer those clients to the HEN programs in the county that they want to move to. But yeah, for today's presentation, we are just talking about statistics and the enrollment process for King County clients.
I see a question from Hillary, and I think that'll probably be a good transition into our final segment here. So Hillary, I don't want you to think I'm dropping that. I'm going to come back to it. There is a question: do I need to go on YouTube for the slides? This presentation will be, this training will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, but the slides and a blog post or recap of this training will be sent to anyone who is registered and to all who are attending. And so with that, unless there are any other questions that I totally missed in the chat, please raise your hand and we'll give you a second to put it back in the chat. But going up to Hillary's question, with the list being so long, Um, with the list being so long, it's it's a reasonable question, right? So why are we adding clients to the list to bring up their hopes? I think one thing to point out is the CCS team here who runs the HEN program. They're not in charge of eligibility, and that is very much something that is determined on a state level. It's connected to budgets and the amount of money that's allocated or rather invested in our communities. And one way for us all to be able to address that is through policy advocacy and advocacy actions. And I'll say it again, the folks in this room who who work in the communities, understand and see and hear, know people's stories, you are very well positioned to be advocating for policies that broaden these programs, make them more accessible, and reach more people, because we all already know about folks who could really benefit from a pretty restrictive, limited program, but nevertheless are not eligible for that. And so first off, thank you all for asking questions, being attentive listeners. Thank you so much to our presenters from Catholic Community Services, Carrie and Sierra. And I want to just transition us over to talk a little bit more about policy advocacy. And we have our policy manager, Hallie Willis, who should be joining us in just a minute to present an advocacy action for us all to take part in. Oh yes, also very big thank you to our interpreters. We really are so happy to welcome you and excited to have you here. Let's see, Hallie, are you with us on the call? Are you able to take over?
Hi, everyone. Ooh, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. Hi, it's good to meet you all. Thanks for giving me some time at the end of this very packed and long training. I'm going to talk, I'm our policy and advocacy manager here at the coalition. And I'm going to do like a awkward, like hard left turn into a completely different topic. So if you want to take a deep breath and let your brain process some of the things that you've just learned before we take that hard left turn, now is a great time to do that. But I've got a couple really good opportunities for folks. First of all, I've got an opportunity to sign on to a letter, and this is about the MFTE program in Seattle. So if you live in Seattle or you serve people in Seattle, you play in Seattle, this is a good opportunity for you. The MFTE program is supposed to be an incentive for developers to build affordable homes for like moderate income folks. Now, I should mention this is not primarily housing that's affordable to like people leaving homelessness, but it is a really important part of our like continuum of affordable housing. If you've lived in Seattle or if you live anywhere around here, you know that the rent is too damn high everywhere. And this is a really important tool to help address some of that affordability in the middle. They're in the process, the city council is in the process right now of making updates and changes to that program because it expires this month. And they've proposed some things that are quite bad for renters. They have proposed some changes to the income and rent limits that would effectively make MFTE apartments, which are supposed to be affordable, really close to market rate for new apartments, like very expensive, even though developers are getting a massive tax break from the city to build these. It would also continue to incentivize the building of like very small apartments. So like micro studios, really teeny tiny 1 bedrooms, but still at a really high price point. So renters really aren't getting the affordability and the benefit that they need for the types of units that they need. I'll say two more things about this program and then I'll give you the opportunity to take action. One thing that really rubs me the wrong way is that currently tenants in MFTE apartments have a 4.5% rent cap, which means that their landlord can't raise their rent more than 4.5% every year. This new update would get rid of that. So tenants could have their rents increased up to 10% at the end of their lease, which if you're a renter like me and you think about what a 10% rent increase would be like for you, like that could be hundreds of dollars a month that's being added to folks that are like 50, 60, 70% of their median income. And finally, unlike any previous iteration of the MFTE program, and this has been around since the 90s, it would have no end date. So this could just continue forever. And it costs the city about $20 million a year in tax breaks that they're giving away to developers. So there's a lot that needs to change about this program if it's going to really provide any level of affordability for the really, really high cost that the city is spending. And so we're asking folks to sign on to this letter either as an individual or an organization or both. We shared a copy. We had about 168 people sign on already and about 18 organizations. And I sent that to the council last night before their meeting this morning about this issue. And we're going to keep it open. We're going to keep those coming in and we're going to send a new copy when this issue comes up for a vote. So please do sign on if you can. If you know anybody who's renting an MFTE apartment or might otherwise be interested, please feel free to share them. Ooh, weird. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me take a look and see if I can fix that. I'm not sure if I can. Another alternative, let me see if I can just send you the letter in the chat. Hopefully people will be able to open this.
For those of you who have clicked on the link, Hallie is replying to a requirement in the link, in the original link to have a Google account. Hallie, I'm sorry I cut you off. You put another link in the chat.
No worries. So I just put the link to the letter itself. So hopefully that one might be easier to access. If it's not, and if you're interested in this issue, just go ahead and email me. I'll put my email in the chat and we can figure out a way to get you a copy and get you signed on if you like.
Yes, that one is much easier to open and we see that and we're able to read it. And at the very bottom, there are multiple pages of people who have signed on and we would love to get your name on this again. I mean, it's everything from residents to workers and yeah. Thank you, Hallie. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, Monte, I see your comment in the chat about the way that you add your signature is through the form. If you can't access the form, just send me an email and say, I would like to sign on to this letter. And here's my name, just so I have a record of like people who have wanted to sign on. Sorry, fun with Google. Okay, any questions about the MFTE stuff before I'll just share a couple other trainings and stuff that we have coming up? Cool. Okay, thanks, Monte.
I don't see other questions about it. I did put Hallie's email in the chat. It's the same email form as mine. It's just Kevin, or it's just Hallie@homelessinfo.org. Again, we just, if we're gonna put your name onto something, we wanna make sure that we have your full consent and your thumbs up. I don't see any questions about MFTE, Hallie, if you wanna move forward.
Yeah, just a couple other quick announcements. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. We have two advocacy trainings coming up. One of them is going to be in person on the 24th of September at 6 p.m. In Seattle at Solid Ground. The other one is going to be online on October 3rd. That's Friday at noon. And these are a great opportunity for anyone, especially service providers, especially folks with lived experience of homelessness, who want to practice different ways of raising your voice and engaging in advocacy. We've focused these a little around the Seattle and King County budget processes, which are coming up and will be a great opportunity for us to advocate for funding for human services countywide. But the things that you learn will help you engage in advocacy anywhere in life. So let me share those with you. And again, please feel free to share these far and wide with anyone who's interested. And then my final announcement is we've also got some candidate forums coming up. The first one is going to be for folks who are running for King County elected, running to be King County elected officials. So we've got a really important election coming up in November for King County Executive and also a few King County Council seats. And so this candidate forum is a great opportunity for folks to get to know the people who are running and learn about what positions they have on human services and how they're going to approach their role if they're elected into that office. So the King County one is going to be online on September 25th at 6 p.m. And then we've got a similar event in Seattle for Seattle candidates, including mayor and city council offices. And that's going to be on October 9th at 6 p.m. in person at El Centro de la Raza in Beacon Hill. So I'll drop the registrations for those as well. Never a dull moment. Thanks, y'all. Come hang out with us at the candidate forums and the trainings.
And also our October 8th fundraiser, Truth to Power. Thank you so much, Hallie, for taking some time to give us an opportunity to sign on to this letter. Again, please email Hallie or myself if you would like to be added onto that letter. And just the last bit about these candidate forums and the advocacy training. You know, candidates are human beings. They respond to some pressure, and we know that they get a lot of pressure from a very, very vocal minority who attends forums and community meetings. And we would love to be able to counteract some of that very small segment of the community that gets their opinions and their perspective heard and catered to all the time. So I really do mean it. You all in this room are some really the right people to be what you're doing every day, advocating for your clients, but also doing it on a policy level, and also having your voice heard in these forum settings. So again, the online one for the county and then the in-person one, all of those links are in the chat. And a huge thank you to everyone involved in bringing this training to you today, our presenters, from BLA and Solid Ground, Patty and April, thank you so much. To our presenters from Catholic Community Services, King County HEN Program, Carrie and Sierra, thank you. And also to our interpreters, thank you again very much. And then lastly, to all of you for coming here and giving us your time. We really, really want to give you these resources. We want to give you these trainings. So please fill out that survey afterwards. Good or bad feedback, we want to incorporate that and really make sure that we're hearing you. So with that, thank you all so much for being here. We're going to stop the recording and end the meeting.